So a fiery question time on The Voice there. The writs were issued for the Voice referendum yesterday with the question of enshrining an Indigenous Voice Advisory Committee in the Constitution, seemingly doomed to fail on October 14, according to the polls. But if the polls are accurate, it won't be the worst result of this country's 44 referendums since the 1901 Federation. Not even close. Constitutional lawyer Anne Toomey pointed out on Afternoon Agenda yesterday that when referendums go down, it tends to be by a big margin.
With a referendum, either they succeed very well or they tend to lose quite badly. It's rarely on the border between.
The worst results were actually under Bob Hawke in 1988. Enshrining various civil and property rights got just 30.79% of the vote. Installing 4-year fixed terms for the House and Senate, just 32.9%. That's why we've still got 3-year terms. Enshrining local government in the Constitution got 33.6%. Next worst was 1973, a Gough Whitlam attempt to give powers to the Commonwealth to legislate on incomes. That got just 34% of the vote. The only successful referendums we know have been bipartisan. Counting Indigenous people in the census got 90% under Harold Holt, and then enabling elections for both houses to be held at once to provide for retiring ages for judges of federal courts and end the system of per capita payments made by the Commonwealth to the states early last century, all got 74% or more. The last referendum in this country, the Republic vote of 1999, got 45% of the vote. Today, Labor's National Secretary Paul Erickson addressed the caucus and encouraged MPs to get out in the next 3 to 4 weeks and campaign strongly for the Voice. This does seem about minimising the damage in this result now. Getting a vote above 40% and as high as that Republican result of 45, perhaps, to spare the blushes of the Prime Minister and the government. Opposition leader Peter Dutton told his party room, meanwhile, according to party room sources, that no matter what the result, the day after the referendum would be a bad day for Australia because of the division that had been created. And he said the country would be bruised by the whole process. And the opposition took on the government on The Voice again in question time today.
The contempt that this government shows for millions of Australians.
Resume your seat.
This Leader of the Opposition is the leader of a misinformation and disinformation campaign. He knows it. He has misled the people of Australia repeatedly throughout this campaign, and he should be ashamed of himself.
Moments before question time, The Australian and the Bunbury Herald reported that Professor Marsha Langton, a member of the referendum working group appointed by the minister, has accused no voters of opposing the referendum because of, quote, base racism or sheer stupidity, unquote. Will the Minister for Indigenous Australians condemn Professor Langton's comments?
I call on everyone involved in this referendum to act respectfully and with care for their fellow Australians. We are a great country. We are enhanced by listening to a diversity of views and opinions. And fundamentally, The Voice is all about the act of listening.
That this House expresses its grave concern at this Prime Minister's comprehensive mishandling of the Voice referendum, including A failure to explain to the Australian people how the members of the Voice will be appointed or elected, B, an unwillingness to consult in relation to the words of the constitutional amendment or to consider limiting the amendment to the issue of constitutional recognition, C, the arrogant assumption that the Australian people will be ready to vote in support of the Voice when they've not been given the details of how it will operate and how it will be structured, and D, the Prime Minister's actions dividing the country in an unprecedented and reckless way.
So that motion was punted by the government until later in proceedings. Later this afternoon, that will be debated. The coalition doesn't have the numbers in the lower house.